G'day everyone, Aaron here from Offshore in Asia. Today coming to you from the quite windy Labuan Island in Malaysia. Now this is the place where you go if you want to get a company set up in Malaysia's international business hub and pay just 3% tax on your corporate earnings, and also get a work permit to live and legally work out here in Malaysia. Now, if you've ever looked into Labuan companies, you probably have come across a thing called substance requirements. So in this video, we're going to have a bit of a closer look. We're going to talk about these substance requirements so you've got a bit of a better understanding, and then you can make a more informed decision whether a Labuan company is right for you. And at the same time, I'm going to show you a little bit around the town itself. And guys, the substance requirements are really important, especially if you want to get your concessional tax rate of 0% for a holding company or 3% for a trading company, which most businesses will be doing when they set up out here in Labuan. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about these substance requirements in detail, and we'll break it down into three sections. First, you have trading companies. This is the most common setup for Malaysia. If you're coming out here with a regular business and you want to get a work permit and you want to get the 3% corporate tax rate, well, what you have to do is you have to have a physical office in Labuan. It cannot be just a virtual address. You also have to have 2 full-time staff out in Labuan. This sounds like a big expense, but it doesn't have to be, when considering that you can hire staff here, lower level staff, for around 5,000 a year, that's US dollars. And particularly if you do have work, real work that you can give your staff, so you actually require staff in your business, then you wouldn't even really look at this as an ongoing cost, because you need to pay your staff anyway to perform various duties for you. And then you have to have annual minimum spend of 50,000 ringgit per year. But generally, by the time you do your audit, your company registration, you pay your staff, you pay your rent, this usually takes care of this amount, so that's not usually a big concern. Now for Labuan holding companies, the substance requirements are a lot more relaxed. You do not have to have an office in Labuan. You do not have to hire your 2 full-time staff in Labuan. All you have to do is turn up in Labuan once a year to hold your annual meeting, and also have 20,000 ringgit per year minimum spend. For licensed activities, so this is more, I guess, higher end businesses who are in the finance, leasing or insurance industries. They have stricter rules, so there will often be more employees that are required at Labuan. These kinds of businesses will also normally have a higher threshold for the annual minimum spend, and it's usually around the 100,000 to 120,000 ringgit per year. And of course, being a business in the finance sector, there will be higher reporting and regulatory requirements to the Labuan Financial Services Authority. So again, guys, if your business fails to meet the economic substance requirements, you risk, well, you probably will have to pay the full Malaysian corporate tax rate of 24%. So you won't get your 3% if you're a trading company, you won't get your 0% if you're a holding company. So if coming out here or using a Labuan structure primarily for tax advantages is one of your main priorities, make sure you meet your substance requirements. So that's the substance requirements out of the way, but you don't just get access to a really low, clean corporate structure without having a bit of upkeep. So what is the ongoing compliance related to running a Labuan entity? There's going to be an annual audit and financial reporting requirement, so you're going to have to do up your financials like you would in any other business and have it audited and then submitted to the Labuan FSA, the Financial Services Authority. Of course, you're going to have to lodge a tax return with that as well, and that will be filed with the Inland Revenue Board. You have to maintain a company secretary and registered office out in Labuan. This is your trust company. If you've read about that, that is a mandatory thing. It's not something you can do yourself, and they handle all of the corporate documentation on your behalf. And we work with partners out here who are one of the best trust companies out here in Labuan. So if you're looking for a reliable trust company to handle the corporate requirements for your Labuan company, we can help you with that. Now, just because you got the company Doesn't mean that you can actually live and work here. You're going to need a work permit for your director. That's going to be you as well. Now this is a 2-year work permit. There is a bit of a process to getting this work permit. We step you through the whole process. We're going to actually explain the whole setup cost a bit more in another video. Another thing to note about this work permit is that once you are living here as a director with your Labuan company, there is a requirement to pay yourself a minimum monthly wage of 10,000 ringgit. Now, if you plan to live outside of Labuan, you can live in Labuan. It's a nice little place. There's plenty of business infrastructure here, nice offices, plenty of restaurants, pretty affordable living. But most people, when they come to Malaysia, they do choose to live on the peninsula. So that would be KL or Penang are the two hotspots. If you want to do that, if you want to live outside Labuan, you're going to have to apply for an additional permit called an LMO, which stands for Labuan Marketing Office. So what you will be doing is you'll be establishing your marketing office in KL or Penang, wherever you actually reside yourself. I wonder what this place used to be. Looks pretty interesting. And because you are hiring staff out in Labuan, you'll have to set them up with all of the registrations that any business will have to do when they hire staff in Malaysia. So that includes EPF registration, which is your retirement funds contribution account. You have to make a 12% contribution on top of their wage into this EPF account. There is the SOCSO, which is Social Security, and that is about 1%. And there is the tax department, of course. What they do here, as far as withholding tax from wages go, you have to submit a report and pay the money on a monthly basis. All right, so what are some common mistakes that businesses make when setting up out in Labuan? Well, you do need to have your office in Labuan. We've already spoken about this, but it's worth mentioning again. It is very important that you meet your substance requirements. So you have to get your office in Labuan. It can be at a co-working space, but it has to be a private room with your own door that you can affix your sign to. That shows your Labuan company registration details. This doesn't have to be a huge expense. You can usually get an office out here for between $200 and $300 a month. Skipping financial reporting. There is a bit of compliance attached to a Labuan company. It sounds a bit daunting at first, but you have to remember that's what the trust company is for here. That's what we are for. We work hand in hand with the trust company and you to make sure that you don't have to worry about all the stuff. We'll tell you when a deadline is coming up and how you have to go about making the particular lodgement, if that is the case, and submitting the money, if that is the case, if it's sort of tax withheld from wages or payments to retirement accounts or whatever it may be. What you're looking at here is Financial Park. This is where a lot of the trust companies are located, where a lot of the co-working spaces are, and where a lot of the business infrastructure that services Labuan companies is located. It's only a short walk from downtown, probably 5 or 10 minutes. Labuan is very walkable, by the way. Back to common mistakes that you can make out here in Labuan. Underestimating the running costs. I would say that generally speaking, you need a budget about $20,000 per year to fund your Labuan operation. Now, having said that, that includes your 2 full-time staff and your office expense out in Labuan, in particular with the 2 full-time staff. I wouldn't necessarily see this as an annual sunk cost in running the Labuan entity, as provided that these 2 staff members are staff that you can actually put to work and, you know, provide a valuable service to your business. If you're going to take the 2 staff out of the picture, then you're looking at about $10,000 a year in annual running costs. Another potential trap is just not meeting your staffing requirements as far as workplace and employment laws go in Malaysia. So again, we're talking about the retirement fund, the EPF, we're talking about SOCSO, the Social Security, having the tax file numbers all set up and registered with the tax office under your employer, and of course paying the monthly withholding tax. This stuff is pretty important. It sounds like a lot, but we do provide a training service for this, and typically I mean, we can do it all for you if you want, but typically what clients do is they will, we'll show them how to do it, and then they will assign the tasks to one of their staff members they have out in Labuan. So that will actually be one of the jobs that they get them doing for them. So here at Offshore in Asia, we of course do Labuan setups. I'm out here right now having a couple of meetings with our team, the trust company out here in Labuan. We don't just set you up and let you to manage it yourself, but although you can do that if you want. We're here from beginning to end. We can help you with all the compliance, ongoing reporting. As I said before, we'll send you reminders of when you got to do this and do that, because there are a few things that it is a bit of a learning curve at the start, but the important thing is that you have support along the way from beginning to end. So whether it's corporate secretarial service, assistance with setting up and adhering to your economic substance requirements, whether you need accounting and audit support, or whether it is lodging your annual Labuan tax return and your associated reporting requirements to the Labuan FSA, we handle all of it. So the key takeaway from this video here, guys, is that if you are serious about setting up a Labuan company, and it can be a really good way to not only lower your tax down to 3% or 0% if you're a holding company, to get a work permit, a renewable work permit to live out here in Labuan. You can bring your family with you, you can bring a maid with you, but it's also a really clean method for international tax structuring. You're not dealing with multiple jurisdictions here. You don't have your company in one country and you living in another country and navigating tax treaties to make sure you're paying dividends at the right time, or not paying it yourself too much, or structuring things in the right way to keep your tax low. You don't have to worry about any of that because it's all centralized within one country, and it is a very clean structure in that sense, in that you can get your 3% tax on corporate earnings while getting a work permit. But of course, with all of that, you really do have to take your substance requirements and the ongoing and associated compliance requirements very seriously, because it all hinges on that. Now, if you want to get in touch regarding Labuan, head over to offshoreinasia.com. You can send us a contact form there. If you want to do some consulting about looking at some of the finer detail and also how this might fit in to your broader international tax and business plan, you could book a consult call with us. Go to our website, top right-hand corner, book a call, and we'll have a chat to you and work through some of these finer details that you might have on your mind. And we'll get you out here, living in Malaysia, living in a low-cost country that has excellent infrastructure, but also paying very low corporate tax while you're at it. This is one way that you can really get ahead. If you do this for a few years, think of all the tax savings, think of all the savings on cost of living. You're going to come out miles in front compared to if you were living in a high-cost country and even in a high-tax country. Malaysia is one of the best places in Southeast Asia for doing business. We'll leave it at that, guys. Catch you later.